What's going on, my creative collective? This is lesson number 23, Heteronymic Symphonies Heard Across the Multiverse, which is lesson 23 from A Course in Miracles workbook, which is, I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. So this is really about taking a look at the world that we've made, building on the impermanence that we talked about yesterday, right? Building on the impermanence. Now, when we invest in meaning, when we make meaning of the world outside of us, what we're actually doing is demonstrating an investment and demonstrating the quality of the thoughts that we're thinking, right? The quality of the thoughts that we're thinking about the world. Because what we're actually doing is addressing and reinforcing all of the meaning that we make through ego. So what does heteronymic mean? Well, that is basically just when a word has two different or multiple meanings. So for example, to row a boat, and a row would be a fight, right? So two different meanings. And I thought this was so appropriate for this because at any given time, there's multiple meanings available to us, and we choose which ones are going to either reinforce the ego usually, or we choose the ones that are going to be most aligned and justify defense and attack. We're going to be in that activated place, that dysregulated place, that angry place. We're going to be in those places that really make it difficult for us to truly see, right? To truly see what's real, that impermanent place, but that awareness that connects everyone. So lesson 23 for, of course, from the workbook is, it talks about here, so a quote from lesson 23, I'll read it to you. It's in section 3, it's verse 2 here, but it says, each of your perceptions of external reality is a pictorial representation of your own attack thoughts. One can well ask if this can be called seeing. Is not fantasy a better word for such a process, and hallucination a more appropriate term for the result? When we look out into the world, we see from our perspective, right? There's a quote that says, people don't see you as you are, they see you as they are. And this is so true of how we see in the world and what we see. Do we see opportunities? Do we see struggles? Do we see barriers? Do we see challenges, right? At a fundamental level, right? What are we seeing? And it is a choice. This is where our choice comes into play. We can choose to see any number of different things in a situation or of a situation or in our interactions with other people. We can choose to see so many different things. So what we're doing is really understanding the multiplicity of meanings available to us and pulling back in a present moment awareness to fully see, and not just see in terms of with your eyes, but see with your heart and comprehend the fact that there's so much more available to us. Coming from a community organizing and activist background, I can say too that sometimes we put so much effort into changing the world outside of us, when what we need to do is change our thoughts about it, because that will rearrange the ways that we apply our own understanding of personal empowerment and how we can change things outside of us. So we try to change the world outside of us with a lot of effort, but sometimes we forget that that's more symptomatic of our thoughts about the world than what's actually true of it. So what does that mean? Well, that means that it's rooted in disconnect, right? When you think about the world in a way that's disconnected from the truth of the connectedness within it, right? Building on yesterday's example of the mycelial networks. If you're the tree, there's a mycelial network that you can't see, but you're still connected to it. It does not require your belief in it because it exists regardless. It does not require your belief in it. It still exists. Attack thoughts are judgments. Attack thoughts are assumptions. Attack thoughts are assigning a meaning to something before we give our heart a chance to understand what it actually is. We push away the possibility, we push away what things could or might mean, because we're so grounded in, and we're invested in this defense against impermanence. Pull back and ask yourself, is this just my impermanence detection system, or is this something that is allowing me to connect to the world around me, to connect to that oneness, to connect with one another, right? It's about asking that question. When we're in this attack thought mode, what we're doing is really symptom management, because symptom management, it's symptomatic of disconnect. So we get into, we start searching for these ways to manipulate reality through effort, right? Which is important. You do need action. You do need effort. There's also another part of pulling back and breathing in the awareness of something, breathing deeply into yourself, breathing deeply into what it is that you're seeing, not what you have seen before that you're applying to this particular moment. Maybe they align. That's fine. Maybe they do. Maybe they do. But how are you giving yourself the freedom to know that if you're responding and if you're reacting, just drop of a hat? We start to shift into the energy of beholding what's in front of us instead of needing to know, instead of making assumptions or setting expectations or placing expectations on it, right? And when we get into this place, it's where our heart starts to really speak to us, and we begin to understand that we can connect to one another, right? We are the mycelial network, right? We are connected to that energy. I use it as a metaphor because it's easy to visualize for my visual-oriented folks. But it allows us to connect to one another and to speak to one another silently. I can tell you, when those who have beheld me and just beheld me without seeing me through their own ego, you can tell there's a difference. And that's not to say that that's the goal alone, because then that can become a tool of the ego. But this is where we're seeing through the heart space, right? We're seeing through and with the heart space so that we can really behold those around us without judgment, right? Without judgment. And it's also where we get into the crux of forgiveness. And if attack is a form of judgment, we also have to consider too that when we get into attack, when we're in attack, or when someone comes at us with that energy, attacking, judging, shaming, we have a choice. It's not always easy, but we don't have to buy into that narrative, right? I think it was Wayne Dyer that said you're going to be invited to a lot of arguments. You don't have to show up to all of them. You don't have to show up to every argument you're invited to. When we get into this place of needing to defend ourselves, it's because we're investing in this idea that other people have been ordained by some power with their opinion to have some truth, some fragment of truth over our experience. Lesson 23 for A Course in Miracles talks about this in section 7. When you finally learn that thoughts of attack and of being attacked are not different, you will be ready to let the cause go. It recognizes that there's an energy of attack. It recognizes the energy of it. Now, I've talked about this with friends before and have even had to take myself to this place, but your body is responding to an energy, and it is also creating an energy, and it is contributing to an energy, right? So for example, your body does not know the difference between a job that you hate and an abusive relationship. Your body does not recognize the fundamental difference because the biochemical responses that you are having internally that are triggering hormonal releases, that are triggering cortisol releases, cannot tell the difference between a really toxic job and a toxic abusive relationship. Your body responds the same. Your body responds the same. Attack thoughts, they work in the same way. And that's where if you think you're being attacked, your body's going to respond in a way that is that of attack. So we really have to reorganize our perception a little bit to understand. And that's where pulling back into the present moment and seeing situations for what they actually are. And what they actually are is in a way saying that they're nothing and everything at the same time. And so who would you be without your belief in a world that is attacking you? Who would you be? Who would you be without that belief in the world? Where else would your energy go? Where else would your energy be free to wander if you were not so preoccupied and had a busy, preoccupied mind with these ego defenses and this need to protect yourself and this need to be defensive and to be in defense and in these tiny acts of war that we get into in our minds, right? Who would you be without them? It's a lot of the work of Byron Katie, whose work I recommend, by the way. But it's a lot of the work of that, like our story. So who would we be without all of those things? I had to take this journey when I was in my 20s. I had to ask myself, as being part of the queer community and an activist, I was so determined to win hearts and minds all over the place that marketing became something that I breathed and lived for and got so good at, because winning hearts and minds as a queer activist was so tied to marketing why I mattered as a human being, why my rights were important. So I had to take a step back and ask myself, what is it about this particular field or industry that was so important to me? And I had to pull back before reinvesting any energy in it. Who would you be without the narrative, right? Who would you be without that? And it was a moment, it was a pivot, because I recognized that the energy that I've been putting into, marketing and how much I do love it, but it was needing to take that inward reflection, right? Who would you be without the story that necessitates attack thoughts? Who would you be without that story? And what would your energy feel like? How much lighter would that be? How much lighter would your energy be without it? So good. The beauty of this is that there's not that much that you need to do because the alternatives already exist. The alternatives already exist because of the tricks of space and time where everything's happening at the same time and not at all, right? It's like collapsing and like time is like doing this, right? So who would you be without all of that? But then also recognizing that the alternatives to your answer before, right? If you see the past, if all we see around us is the past, breathing in that awareness of the present moment, we begin to ask ourselves the questions of, okay, well, if that's all that I see, then what else is possible? All of the possibilities already exist. So this isn't about going out and making, checklists and goals and to-do lists and all of this stuff. It's just to sit in the knowing that even if you aren't sure right now, even if you don't know, if you don't have a concrete answer, right? Even if you don't have a concrete answer, the ego loves concrete answers, right? It loves concrete answers. But even if you don't have those accessible to you, they already exist in the world. So this isn't about effort. This is about presence. It's about presence and sinking back into that and coming back home to yourself internally, coming back home inside you. So that, my friends, is lesson 23 for A Course in Creativity, Heteronymic Symphonies Heard Across the Multiverse. And lesson 23 from A Course in Miracles, which is, I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. So I hope that you have a wonderful day ahead of you. And of course, wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, I hope it finds you very, very well. Take care, my friends.